Shalom, Erev Tov, good evening from Jerusalem, Israel. This is Lowell Joseph Gallen, founder of the Root and Branch Association Limited, established in 1981, 40 years ago, and now celebrating our 40th anniversary, 40 years young, established in New York State, in God of Israel, bless America. And I would like to welcome our viewers and listeners worldwide, and our live Zoom studio panel and audience to this evening's program in our Root and Branch Association Limited English Language Conference and Lecture Series, broadcasting from Jerusalem, Israel, and now celebrating our second quarter century. As we always do at the beginning of each program, we thank those who hosted our first quarter century, from January 1995 until December of 2020, actually a little bit longer than that. Then the whole country was shut down with the pandemic, opened up a little while ago. I got used to using Zoom and doing these programs. Now I'm in my living room. Sometimes I'm in the kitchen. So we thank the OU Israel, Orthodox Union of America Israel Center for hosting us for 25 years at Keren Hayesod Street at their World Center. And our friends there, Mr. Phil Chernovsky, Mrs. Tony Chernovsky, and Ita Rachel Russick, with whom we worked so well for a quarter century. Now we're on to the next quarter century. So thanks to all of you. Now our program for this evening is our third, episode 3 of our new monthly Pashtun Israel Fellowship Seminar. The chairman of the seminar and the chairman of the fellowship and the host of the seminar is internationally renowned human rights activist and Pashtun activist based in Europe, in Paris, France, Mr. Fazal or Rachman Afridi, and he will be hosting our third monthly seminar, and we're very happy to do this. So as always do, I say where we are and when it is. We are in the land of Israel, city of God, Jerusalem, hill of the priests, Givat Hanania Abu Tur, overlooking Mount Moriah, where we believe that the third and final Israelite temple of Jerusalem will soon be under reconstruction and stand forever. As per the prophet Ezekiel, please see the biblical book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48. Today is Tuesday, July 27th, 2021 in the Gregorian calendar. And it is the 18th day of Av 5781 in the Hebrew Israelite calendar. We are now in the Shabbatot of consolation, the 7 weeks leading up to Rosh Hashanah, the new Israelite year, for what will be a Shemitah sabbatical year, and we hope we'll see lots of miracles and wonders for Israel and the world, and especially the long-suffering Pashtun Israelites of Afghanistan and Pakistan and a worldwide diaspora. We hope we will see wonderful and amazing liberations and revolutions occur. Having said all of that, I want to welcome a member of our panel, Professor Asher Matathias from Long Island, the president of B'nai B'rith of the 5 towns, Zorba the Jew. Born in a cave, this is actually, sometimes these stories are actually real. Born in a cave in Greece, Nazi-occupied Greece, in 1943, and saved by the grace of God and the chesed, the compassion of a Nazi German Wehrmacht officer. Now, without further ado, I would like to hand the program over to my friend and colleague of many years. Think Yiddish, dress British, Dr. Les Glassman, originally from South Africa, which doesn't really exist anymore, now of Jerusalem, a dentist. You need a crown or a root canal. Of course, you shouldn't need them. If you had brushed your teeth and used dental floss and had an apple a day, which keeps the doctor away, instead of bamba and sweets and goodies that are not good for children, you would not have to go to the dentist. But since you didn't, you will. So you come and you need a crown, a root canal, or soon we'll have genetic dentistry, you can regrow everything. Come see Les in Jerusalem, Dr. Glassman. Now I will hand the program over to Dr. Glassman, who will introduce our esteemed and honored guest and long-term friend who wrote an introduction to my first and only book. It's getting moldy. I did it 10 years ago. I got to write a new one. Fazal Orechman Friedman. That's a Freudian slip. Fazal Orechman Afridi. And here is Les, who's going to introduce him.
Well, Lal, thank you so much for your very kind words. And it really is a tremendous honor and a privilege to introduce our very dear
Les, you got to hold that the little...
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. Lal, thank you very much for your lovely words. And it really is a great honor and a privilege, a tremendous honor and a privilege to introduce our very close and dear friend, Fazal Rahman Afridi. This is, I think, the third in the series. And being not only an expert, a world expert on the Pashtuns, but you've done so much to help in human rights and your work and your writings. And we are in awe. And I've been reading some of your writings, and I just cannot believe the amazing work that you're doing. So we wish you so much success. You should, in everything that you do, and that the Pashtun, that their suffering should come to an end, and they should be recognized. And we hope that this connection with Israel and the Pashtun people just becomes closer. And I just want to mention something actually quite unbelievable, that on the 29th, which is tomorrow, there's going to be a joint Zoom meeting with the Bangladesh Philatelic Stamp Society, and Israel's invited, and I'm going to be joining in this opening ceremony of exhibition in Bangladesh. So, you think a few years ago this would have been impossible, but it's not impossible. And we see that there's been direct flights to Morocco and the UAE. Jews are feeling safer to go now to the UAE than they are in parts of Europe. Who would have believed such a thing possible? So we hope and pray that the connection between the Pashtuns and the Jewish people becomes closer. And Fazal, you are a conduit for this. So without any further ado, we really in great anticipation for your talk this evening. Thank you so much. Fazal, thank you. We eagerly await your talk. Thank you.
It's me. Thank you. Thank you, Les Glassman. Thank you, Lowell. And thank you, Professor Asher Matthias. Actually, as we discussed earlier, we thought that there will be some guests along with Nawraz Jat Afridi. But maybe he is busy, or I think not informed. I don't know. As we have discussed, we are talking about Pashtuns. So for me, it's relevant to discuss the present situation in Afghanistan, where Taliban are attacking the democratically elected government of Afghanistan with the assistance of Pakistan. I prepared a statement for a Bangladeshi think tank, which is organizing a Zoom conference, international Zoom conference on Afghanistan on 31st of July. So I'll read out that statement as it is relevant to our program also. And then we will further discuss the situation. So I would like to turn your attention towards a rapidly deteriorating situation in Afghanistan, where Taliban are advancing and capturing territory and have started a systematic campaign of destruction of public assets, suicide and car bomb attacks, targeted killing of women, and summary execution of prisoners of war. I think what has been achieved in the last 20 years in terms of women empowerment, human rights, protection of religious and ethnic minorities, democracy, and building state institutions will evaporate in no time if Taliban capture Kabul. All indicators show that Pakistan Army is behind this destruction of Afghanistan by openly supporting Taliban against the popularly elected Afghan government by providing them training, finances, and logistics to destabilize Afghanistan. The terrorist organizations, ordinary public, and even state-sponsored media of Pakistan are openly celebrating the destruction of Afghanistan by Taliban. In pursuit of the security-centric Afghan policy to achieve strategic depth in Afghanistan, Pakistan has even compromised its own geo-economic interests like access to Central Asia and trade with these landlocked states. What Pakistan pursues is in contradiction to its stated objectives. Actually, Pakistani military establishment has not only been double gaming United States of America and the West, but its own people and the parliament too. The most worrying scenario one can predict is the increase in the Islamic militancy and radicalization in the region if Taliban take over Kabul and the country plunges into a civil war. It will have a domino effect in the region, and terrorist groups encouraged by the Taliban victory can destabilize Indian Kashmir and will result in the resurgence of militant groups in Bangladesh, as has been in the case in the 90s. Pakistan's interference into the internal affairs of Afghanistan can be gauged from the recent statements of high-level Afghan government officials as under. The president of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, in his address at the conference hosted by Uzbekistan, said that the intelligence estimates indicated the influx of over 10,000 Taliban fighters from Pakistan. According to Amrullah Saleh, vice president of Afghanistan, Pakistan has threatened to use its air force against the Afghan military if it tries to dislodge the Taliban from the Spin Buldak area on the border with Balochistan, Pakistan. In a recent interview to an American news channel, Hamdullah Mohib, National Security Advisor of Afghanistan, said that Pakistan is preparing 15,000 Taliban to infiltrate into Afghanistan to further destabilize it. It is in addition to already sent 10,000 Taliban, as stated earlier by President Ashraf Ghani. I think India is a very important country in the region, which can play a vital role in peace and stability in Afghanistan. India is the one and the only country which has played a very positive and important role in economic development of Afghanistan by investing $2 billion. Contrary to Pakistan's security-centric policy, India offered an economic and developmental-centric policy for Afghanistan, which naturally tilts towards peace and stability. India is a peace builder, while Pakistan is a spoiler in the region. So to avoid what happened to Bangladesh in 1971, India as regional military and economic power has the responsibility to intervene to protect Afghan lives. India needs to play its peace-building role in Afghanistan by strengthening its military, economic, and democratic institutions. I believe that an Afghan-led and Afghan-owned political settlement supported by international community, particularly US, EU, Russia, China, and UN, is possible for peace and reconciliation in Afghanistan. Acknowledging the Kabul peace process as the main forum and vehicle along with the other regional and international peace initiatives on Afghanistan, the future of peace and stability depends on holistic peace achieved through incremental peace processes in gradual progress, as deftly put forward by Anna Larson. Afghanistan is at the crossroads facing two possible futures: indefinite violent conflict or gradual progress towards sustainable peace. Choices made now over strategy, tactics, and resources can tip the balance either way. We need a radical new approach to peace in the country. While the declaration of the religious scholars of the International Conference titled Peace and Stability in Afghanistan, held on 10 and 11 July 2018 is very important, we should emphasize the importance of women's full and meaningful participation in reconciliation, security, and economic development. Commitment for implementation of the Afghan National Action Plan on Women's Security and Peace is vital. Now the responsibility rests on international community, particularly USA, EU, UK, and India, not to abandon Afghanistan at this crucial juncture and help Afghanistan find a political settlement for a lasting peace and stability. So this was my statement, which I have prepared for that Zoom conference to be held on 31st on peace in Afghanistan. So I think it's relevant, and we can discuss it further if you have some questions. Thank you very much.
Yes, Faisal, can I ask you, can you hear, is this okay?
Yeah.
You know, we're seeing the Taliban really taking over Afghanistan. And people warned before, when the American forces were leaving, that this is going to happen, and it is happening. So my question is, why is the world silent? Here we're seeing terrible atrocities that we know are happening and are going to happen, and no one really cares. It's not on the front pages of the newspapers, it's not on CNN, it's not on Sky, very little news coverage. But we knew it's going to happen. Is it because, I don't know, what is the reason? Why do you think the world just doesn't care?
Yes, it's a very important question and even a puzzle for us, as we have discussed a few moments ago. Actually, it's the United States of America which has spent trillions of dollars in Afghanistan to raise the institution, the democratic institutions, and even the military in Afghanistan. And it's leaving now and leaving the ground for the Taliban. So it seems to be, a little bit strange for us that why the American decided this withdrawal in such a haste. But on the other hand, the things will open up after a few months, but it seems that the Americans want some, a piece of a cake in the upcoming, interim government in Afghanistan. So to force some people in the government, some factions in the government, like Tajik, Uzbek, and other Hazaras, to give them that piece of a cake to the Taliban. I think they want to make them something like they are conquering territory. Actually, you would have heard the same statements for the last 20 years that Taliban are in control of 85% of the area. So actually nothing has changed, except that recently they tried to capture some towns in the north of Afghanistan, and then on the border with Pakistan, like Chaman and the Spin Buldak area. But actually, that seems to be a strategic retreat of the Afghan forces, so that the Taliban come to their areas, so that they can be identified and then attacked. Because Taliban are spread across Afghanistan, they are in small, numbers everywhere. So it is becoming difficult for the Afghan forces to attack them. So maybe that was something strategic for Afghan forces, and also to force those warlords by the Americans to give them some place in the coming interim government. So it seems like that, but I don't know what will happen, because when we look at the Pakistan's military establishment security-centric policy of strategic depth in Afghanistan, that seems that if they can, they will exploit this situation for their interest, and that is the dangerous situation. Even like what happened in 90s after the fall of Najib. That type of situation can also be created if Pakistan is left unbridled what it is doing now in Pakistan by sending, these Taliban to Afghanistan. So the situation is, we cannot understand what's happening.
Well, Afghanistan has been in the news for millennia. Alexander the Great met his defeat there, and since then he has gone back and forth. Nobody has tamed Afghanistan. The closest thing that I compare our experience in the 20 years we've been there is the comparable time we spent in Vietnam. Vietnam on the 30th, I remember that day so clearly, April 30th, 1975, when the last Americans were climbing on the pads of the helicopters to leave. It was an ideological battle with communism. In Afghanistan, it's a religious battle. It's a cultural battle. It's I don't know whether any sense of democracy where you give and take and you compromise. Is that the closest thing is the jirga, the tribal councils that get together and through consensus, but the consensus is always with the extremists. So I wonder how in the world a generation that has been exposed to the American educational system of admitting women in society, of shedding the burqas, how all of that is going to be crashing down when the Taliban take over. We may be preparing ourselves to witness public beheadings, just atrocious things. Is there any hope where the United Nations, perhaps, you mentioned Russia, China, and the United States, could sort of pump some sense into the Taliban? Is the Taliban amenable to anything?
I think, as I have mentioned earlier, the situation is complicated because there are so many regional and international powers, and they have their own interest. If you leave the Afghans to themselves, they will resolve the issue, immediately. The most important problem is that through this Islamization of Pashtuns for the last 40, 50 years, Pashtuns have lost their traditions, We have lost our jirga system. We have lost our, customs due to this Talibanization. And Pakistani generals, they have played a very important role in it, which the other countries could not play. They destroyed the Pashtuns, the Afghans from inside. So that is the most dangerous thing, that the Afghans have been divided by Pakistan. And this divide and rule policy of Pakistan is even now working. Talibans, I think they haven't changed their ideology, They have the same ideology, they want the same system. The problem is what the Americans think, what they have already done with Gulbuddin Hikmatyar to put him into the government and slowly, get all the venom from him and to make him a person who is democratic or support the democratic institutions. But here the problem is that the Taliban want the whole government. They want a bigger piece of a cake. So that will be very difficult for the international community to force them to assimilate into the democratic system of Afghanistan. The other problem is that up till now, and right from the beginning, the governments in Afghanistan and the international community, they have focused on some cities to have their administration, to have their military, local administration. They develop all the institutions, but most of Afghanistan was kept, a rural area where there was no law. So the same case is even now. The Talibans are not capturing any territory. They are in the rural areas where there are no institutions of Afghanistan government. So that is the reason that, and these, most importantly, these areas are the Pashtun areas which are kept underdeveloped. When you keep the areas underdeveloped, uneducated, you know, it's very easy to use them for war and militancy. So that is the case. So we need to change all these things if we want a sustainable peace in Afghanistan, and most importantly, the interferences from regional and international actors into Afghanistan. If that doesn't stop, I think Afghanistan will continue to bleed.
All right.
Thank you, Asher. Lowell, do you have any comments or any?
Well, yes, certainly. This isn't really the place, since we have a real world's leading expert on the subject here. There's really no point for me to pretend to be like a barefoot doctor in Mao's China. I'm no fan of Mao. When they didn't have regular doctors, they sent in the barefoot doctors, because I have some limited knowledge because of the research I did for my book, and Fazal's introduction is in it. Since Fazal is here, there's no point for me to comment about what he's speaking about. What I could say, if we want to look at this from a prophetic biblical perspective, if you look at 6,000 years of human history, all empires have risen and fallen. So why the communist dictatorship in China may seem like a terrifying colossus, 1949 to now, and the Azeri Amalekite Ayatollahs in Iran may seem like a terrifying force. They've been there since 1979. That is a very important point. Whenever I look at a situation, I want to know, what is someone's ethnic background and what is their religious background? This usually flies over the radar with people in Western countries because they don't take religion or ethnicity seriously. Stalin was a Georgian, he wasn't a Russian. Lavrenti Beria, who was a monster like Stalin, that's why they could work together so well, wasn't a Russian. Napoleon was a Corsican. Hitler came from Linz? Browno on in, he was born in, but he lived in Linz. I have to check that.
Austria.
He was from Austria, yeah, but it was a small town. He wasn't from Germany.
A Catholic too.
And he was a Catholic in a country that was a Protestant majority. In the South, okay, it's Catholic in Bavaria. So here you have, in Iran, the 50% of the population is Persian. As Arthur Braunstein, who spoke in our lecture series, pointed out, the other 50% are all sorts of other ethnic groups. The Azeris are a very small ethnic group. Now, Azerbaijan, the nation, has always been very good to its Jewish minority, as have all in the Caucasus in general, and in Central Asia. It's a different world. It's not Arab Islam. It's not Wahhabi Islam. And they've been very good to Jews, also more or less in Shiite Iran. I know that from speaking to Jews who came here from Iran. What is my point? My point is that empires rise and fall, and in the grand scheme of things of 6,000 years, why Iran may appear like a terrifying colossus, and Pakistan, which is a not real nation, may appear like a terrifying colossus, and a communist Chinese dictatorship with 1 billion people is a colossus. Well, if you look at it over 6,000 years, easy come, easy go, Mongol Empire comes and gone, they'll be gone too. But in the meantime, what do? So prophetically, we believe there's a reunification of the 12 tribes of Israel. And God states we have 15 prophets, the 3 big ones, Ezekiel, Jeremiah, and Isaiah. And the 12, they're not minor prophets. They're not minor, they're just shorter. 15 prophets who have books. Then there are other prophets and prophetesses who are mentioned, like Huldah the prophetess. She's mentioned in the book of Kings. She had a school for ladies to study prophecy. So in a prophetic perspective, the tribes are reunited. And the prophets are very clear. While all the sinners of my people shall be destroyed, that means Israel, there's a hit list for all the nations, for all the things they did to Israel. And it may take time until the accounts build up for the payment due, but eventually they all get it. So that in the same way that the Soviet Union fell after 70 years, and most people don't realize that even though many of the early Bolsheviks were Jews, they were very anti-Jewish Jews and anti-traditional Judaism Jews, and caused tremendous damage over 70 years. And then the classical Russian Orthodox Christian anti-Semitism, Jew hatred of the 19th century was replaced by Soviet communist Jew hatred of the 20th century, both from the initial Jew self-hating anti-religious Jewish communists, and then as Stalin and the Russian nationalism reasserted itself, they got killed off one by one. And the Soviet Union, up until the very end, was doing terrible things to Jews in Israel, using the East German security services to sponsor acts of mass murder against Jews all over the world, which is incredibly symbolic considering what they had been doing very earlier when they were part of Nazi Germany. Just the flags changed. What does it have to do with anything? Bluntly, Pakistan will be destroyed, Iran will be destroyed, or the regimes will. It's not about the people. And the communist Chinese dictatorship in that empire will be, they will be destroyed. How they'll be destroyed, I don't know. They will be destroyed. Everyone else along the way up until now has been destroyed, and they have no special magical power that will keep them in power. It's very important also to realize that just as Assad, who was an Alawite in Syria, representing 10% of the population, has controlled a society of tribes, clans, and families where 90% of the people are Sunnis. The Azeri, Amalekite Ayatollahs, Khomeini, they represent a very small ethnic group. And the form of Islam they represent, as Sheikh Palazzi explained, there's a technical name for it. I don't remember what it is, the 12 Imams. The form, the Azeri Amalekite Ayatollahs in Iran, who are busy destabilizing Afghanistan too, are to Shiite Islam what the Wahhabis are to Sunni Islam, a monstrous, metastasized, suicide, mass murder, death cult that have caused immense harm. Well, the Wahhabis have been around longer. They've been around 250 years. This crew has only been there 1979, 2000, about 40 years. Anyway, they'll all be gone, all of them. So the question is, what do we do in the meantime until they are gone? Well, we can do what we do, like these programs right here. Regarding Navras, Navras's intention wasn't to bring on all the scholars all at once, was over the next several months, like he has 8 of them, one at a time, to bring them on as a, I think that's your friend from California coming on now, one at a time, and they will come on one at a time. Hello, Shahi. I think you're in California. I know you were the special guest speaker of honor last session, I think. Good to see you. So what can Israel do? What can Israel do? Of course, what could Israel do? Jews worldwide and Jews in Israel or our regime should do whatever it can to build up relations with, wait a minute, Pashtun in Afghanistan and Pakistan and around, in every single way. If I was in charge, which I'm not, I'd send in IDF commandos. I'd call Putin and say, I need 40,000 Spetsnaz. I'd call Trump, who's still the real president. Asher doesn't agree with me. We have a big bet. Who knows who the beers when all this forensic. Putin, I would call America. I'd call and say, I want a couple of thousand Green Beret. And I'd even resurrect from the dead about 20,000 Waffen SS. And I'd bring them in, and I would go in, and I would wipe out every single Taliban from one end of the country to the other. It's not a job for nice Jewish boys. It has to be done. And then you get into the very, very nasty question of who's backing Pakistan in putting these Wahhabi psychopathic killers into Afghanistan. And let's be fair to these boys. Most of them are orphan boys who were raised, I don't even want to call them a school, not even a reform school. The madrasot of northern Pakistan are places where they're raped, tortured, and encouraged to be like the Janissaries in the Turkish army. You exist to kill and be killed. And for this I hold responsible. I'll tell you who I hold responsible. Black Ops and MI6 of England. There are many Englands. The CIA and the Saudi Secret Services. And I have a message for you, the God of Israel. Sooner or later, all the bills come due. And every nation that has caused harm to Israel, and I mean all 12 tribes, gets zapped. It can be an asteroid, it can be a comet, it can be an earthquake, it can be a tsunami, it can be an atom bomb, it can be a disease. No one goes unpunished. And there's an angel with a sword drawn over the capital of all these countries. You better get right with God before he says, I've had it, okay, time's up, boom. All right. So I would send in special forces, including the IDF. I wouldn't take any prisoners because unfortunately, these boys are not reformable. These are like MK Ultra zombie suicide murder killers. Could they be deprogrammed? Possibly, possibly. But I would just go in and most of all, I take all the Wahhabi clerics from Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Gulf state. I tell you, I cut off their heads, their foreskins, their testicles, and piled them up in front of their villages, because that's what Arabs and Muslims respect, which is force and power. You got to get physical with these guys. And then I would go and I'd burn to the ground all of the madrasot in northern Pakistan. I would slaughter all. These are not teachers. These are like dog trainers. I would kill them all. And then in addition, I would round up all the members of the Pakistani military under Noahide law, establish Noahide courts of justice. The punishment for theft, murder, rape, and child human sacrifice is death. And I put them all to death legally with a court. And I hope to live to see that happen. In the meantime, until it does happen, as Pakistan's being backed by in destabilizing Afghanistan and the Pashtunistan, there's a lot of bad actors here. It's not a game and it's not an act. Asher does community theater. He's a great actor. This is not community theater. This is real. Also, because also there's billions of dollars of resources in Afghanistan, and the Chinese communist dictatorship wants it. People mean nothing to them. And a point I've made before, and I'll keep making it, Zechariah says that the fast days will be turned into feast days. It's very famous prophecy. Jews and religious Jews know it. I have to look up the exact verse, and I will when I'm done with my monologue, and we go back to the rest of you. And in the commentary, one of the commentators says that the children of Israel will mourn for their Holocaust separately from the children of Judah. Now, I use the term Holocaust in the plural. Why? Most people think Holocaust is just a burnt offering. That's true. But if we look in the book of Isaiah, chapter 10, verse 1, Isaiah talks about a Shoah that will come upon the people. And the commentators, I'll get it when I'm stopped talking, and I'll read it to you. That one, it comes from far away, and two, it's totally unexpected, the form in which it comes. Like in World War II, people said they're gonna gas you and burn you, like Asher and I were discussing this. People got out of Auschwitz, got to Hungary and said, run for your lives. The Nazis are going to gas you and burn you, among other ways of disposing of you. And even though it was 1944, and even though there were anti-Jewish restrictions, this was something that was not part of their experience with pogroms, Khmelnytsky, yeah, but not that. It hadn't happened before. So what you have with the Pashtunim is a Shoah, a Holocaust. There are many Holocausts. It doesn't just have to be us. It can be the 3 million people murdered in Cambodia, the 3 million East Bangladeshis who were Muslims murdered by the West Pakistanis, the 900,000 people murdered in Rwanda with the Hutus and the Tutsis, the 1 million boys slaughtered between the war's two psychopathic man gods, Saddam Hussein and Khomeini in the 80s. And it certainly applies to the millions of Pashtun who were murdered, wounded, refugees, And the old Soviet Union, one of the reasons it fell, in my opinion, was the great sin of what they did from 1978 to 1988 in Afghanistan. That's why when I read in Russia Today, they're commenting on what NATO did this and that. I think you guys got to be kidding. Not in any way to justify what NATO does when it's bombing a village. But you forgot those Hind helicopters? You forgot General Gromov and Gorbachev, the war criminals? I didn't forget them. They're on my internationally most wanted list. I haven't forgotten it all. And everything anyone
about the
does.
TOW missiles that we
What?
provided the Mujahideen, the TOW missiles,
Okay, wait a
unbelievable.
minute.
They're
That was
using that now against us.
Wait a minute. There, I got to add a footnote because
Yeah.
the real Pashtun Mujahideen were not Wahhabis. They were not what is now known as the Taliban. They were genuine resistance movement, and they defended themselves from mass murder and slaughter. It's not, they were then betrayed. Fazal mentioned Gulbadan Hekmatyar, who supposedly had been tamed. I don't believe a word of it. I wouldn't bring him in a government. I just bring him to the gallows. And other warlords. There was a real genuine Pashtun resistance groups, often squabbling with each other as much as fighting the Soviets. They were traditional Pashtun with a traditional Sunni, with a heavily Sufi influenced faith. They were betrayed by the CIA, the Saudi intelligence services, and the Pakistani ISA, and the Taliban were brought in. The Taliban did not fight that war. They did not win it. They came in on the backs of all the dead. And the Soviets littered Afghanistan with mines designed to look like toys to cripple children, but not to kill them. Because since the Pakistan, unlike we here who do business with our enemies, we have no honor. The Jew forgot what it was. If you were wounded in Afghanistan, two other guys would carry you over the mountains to Peshawar, because at that point, Zia al-Haq was backing the legitimate resistance. I have to give him credit for that. To what we wouldn't even call a hospital. They would carry you over the mountains. Here, they make cheshbonot. We do business, not we, our occupation regime. It's a disgrace with the Philistine chaos and Hamas, which is also Wahhabi. But the Pashtun still had the ancient Israelite traditions of honor, dignity, and self-respect. That's been beaten out of Jews in the West, I'm sorry to say. Yes, there's exceptions, and certainly beaten out of the government here. If the Pashtun were here and one rocket was fired from Gaza, there wouldn't be two rockets, and there'd be very few people left in Gaza. A woman went running and got raped and murdered from her yishuv, and there were the Pashtunim here. All 10 Arab villages around it would be burned to the ground and no one would be left. They wouldn't do it again. Just like with Simon and Levi, with the sister Dinah, and they went and killed all the men. And it says when they left Jacob, again, like ghetto Jew, like, oh, I'll be destroyed. No, God put, what did God think of that? He put a magwa misavia, terror around the Israelites. As they went south, the tribes, nothing has changed in the Arab and Muslim world. We're terrified. A Jew came by, they peed in their pants and ran ahead in the basement. That's the way you got to do it in the Arab and Muslim world. So to conclude from a prophetic perspective, until all these wonderful prophecies come true, they may come true tomorrow morning. An asteroid may hit Pakistan, would do the world a favor, not the Pashtun areas, of course. Hit Karachi, just wipe it out. That would be it. But until those things happen, we all have to do what we can do, which is tell the truth, tell the story. Again, not ask why does the mainstream media not report it, because they're not a media, they're corporate fascist mouthpieces representing the corporations that own them. And yes, Asher, I agree that Fox News is fake news, but maybe for different reasons than you. They're all fake. Now, there are outlets that are not fake. We're not fake. We're very little. I want to be little. I don't want to be too noticed. I'm glad the numbers are small, but it's the question of who is watching where.
To what extent is the drug trade? We don't.
Oh, yeah, Asher's right. That. Money makes the world go round, as Joel Gray said in Cabaret.
Yeah.
When the Taliban were supposedly thrown out, when Bush went in, drug production went up. How else do you think the CIA and MI6 financed their black operations? Come on, guys, let's get real. Money is money. Yes, everything in this Sodom and Gomorrah, this toxic mix from hell is there. The drugs, the resources, and everybody wants them. The Russians want them, the Chinese want them, we want them. And they'd be very happy if everybody was killed off, because I want the people, they want the resources. So yeah, there's a lot. That's what I would do. I'd send in an Israelite army. As I said, Vladimir, give me 40,000 Spetsnaz. Whoever the president of the United States, give me 20,000 SEAL Team 6 and Green Beret. And work with the real Pashtun and say, okay, where are they? And say, okay, in 2 months, there'll be not one left alive, especially the teachers. What do I do with them? I'll tell you what I do with them. Now I'll conclude my monologue. After the destruction by Saul of the Amalekites, which wasn't complete, which is why I lost the kingship, Agag, the king of the Amalekites, is brought to Samuel. And Agag says, the bitterness of death is at hand. Now, if Samuel was a Jew today in some establishment Jew organization, say, you know what, you need therapy. And also, we can give you $1 million book deal and make a movie to Hollywood. How did you feel when you were slaughtering and ripping apart all those women? But Samuel thought like an Israelite, not like a ghetto Jew who wants to make money off the deal. I'm sorry to say, in Hollywood or the media. He said, as your sword has made women childless, so shall your mother be childless among women. And he said, give me a sword. And the prophet cut him to pieces from head to toe. And Elijah did the same thing with the 850 prophets on Mount Carmel, 400 of Baal and 450 of Astarte at the end. He said to the people, don't let one escape. They brought them down to the river. And he wasn't, he did it by proxy kill. Elijah killed them all himself. That's the way you do it. Okay, so now you've heard what I had to say. In the meantime, we get the truth out. We tell the truth. You're right, Asher. The drugs, the resources, everyone's involved. And also, as God says in many places in the prophets, if you mess with my people, it's not going to be good for you. Meaning, if within 10 years, the communist dictatorship of China exists, and I'm talking about the people, the nightmare Ayatollah Amalekite Azeri nightmare in Iran exists, and the Pakistani, what are they, Baluchis or whatever they are, nightmare, if they still exist, I'd be surprised. We will exist, they will not exist. Okay, I said enough. Now I hand it back to the rest of you. Shadi, let's ask you to unmute. Les is on the way home, so that's why we don't see him. I hand it back to the rest of you. Yeah, that was my comment.
Hi, sir.
Thank you. Hey, thank you. I'm sorry, this is my new telephone. I just press a button. I hope I don't record because it's to record. I don't want to record it, And my telephone is new. In case it happened, tell me that I go back to do something to clear it. So anyway, maybe this is you somewhere that recording. Fazal may be recording or who. But anyway, it's not I press a button. I don't know. I don't, record this. Thank you. I was driving, and thank you everyone, all of you here being. I just had to see who are here. But a few things that I would like to add. What's happening right now in Afghanistan, because I'm a part of that land, and lately there's a lot of things going on. What happened in Spin Boldak border to Pakistan is that first the Taliban made a video and picture of those who didn't want it to fight. They just surrounded, and then they give them a certificate that they are free, and there are hundred of people, and then they made a video of them, but minute later they slaughtered them. So this is their, way, how they lie to human being, how they lie to everyone, how they lie to God, and I don't understand, these the state of Pakistan is still, giving full support to them, and I'm very disappointed with the international community, especially international media, when they still close their eyes and don't talk about those truth. The other day, I was reading something in Reuters that Afghanistan accuse Pakistan. I mean, Afghanistan doesn't accuse. This is a fact. Just everything. There are Maulana Fazl Rahman, Maulana Samiul Haq, who used to tell us about the holy war against communism. Today they are congratulating the same communist state of China to congratulate them. My whole point is here that we have been used in a war, like our respected speaker early said. When the Russian came to Afghanistan, I was a child. Our only hope and wish was my father when he left the country, and when they kidnapped my one of my uncle. We wanted a free Afghanistan. But when we came to Pakistan, there was so many traps, and they had built already madrasas in the terrorist training camps in the name of religious schools. They brainwashed us. They took our identity, and they took everything from us. We have, like today, the other day, in Afghanistan, back in Afghanistan, we have a lot of land. Probably my father my father and uncle, the family has probably 10,000, 8,000 acre land. But my uncle yesterday died, before yesterday, and we bury him here in California. He didn't have a piece of land in Afghanistan. My other uncle died in Kabul because in the village there are Taliban coming in that area, and in that 10,000 acre of land, my uncle had we didn't have a piece of land that we bury him. We took him in the mountain to Kabul, high, and below a big rock, we buried him. So this is Afghanistan. This is my story. This is our life. The land that we grown up is not belong to us. And we cannot bury our dead in those lands. The state of Pakistan, and their terrorists who have 45,000 terrorist training camps in the name of madrasa in Pakistan. Those terrorists, the people might think, the Western might think, the European might think that they will just destroy Afghans and Afghan life. But let me tell you that this is an ideology. The ideology spread like a wind. There are countries there, in America, there are a lot of Muslims in Europe, in India, in Israel, in all. If these destructive ideas go there and go to the mind of ordinary Muslims, they will turn to the like the way they turn us to zombie, they will turn them to zombie, and everyone will have difficult life. Just don't take. We should, every civilized human being, every human right activist, everyone who respects human rights should stand with us in this difficult time, and defend us, and stop Pakistan, and stop those who funding the state of Pakistan. Yet the question is, how can Pakistan afford 45,000 madrasa where are millions of students? Where do they get the money? I think this is the job of every one of us here, and everyone everywhere, that we stop those who fund that, because this will destroy our future generations, generation of every religion, Hindu, generations of Jews, generation of Christian, generation of ordinary Sufis, Muslims, generations of Afghans, Israelis, American, European, and everyone. So my point is this is not just this is just not Pashtun's war, this is not just Afghan wars, this is everyone's war. They have to give shoulder to us and stop the state of Pakistan. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Shai Sadat Sahib, for your time.
We're in the cusp of having a tremendous outpouring of expatriate Afghans in the United States. Inshallah, I hope that it is carried out. The translators and other people who were identified closely with the American actions in Afghanistan. So out of the tragedy of Afghanistan, just like in the Holocaust, some good will come, to the extent that there will be a replenishing of our population in America of newly arrived Afghans, and perhaps also in France. So I wonder. However, what do you do? You know, how do we deal, back to that question about moderates in Afghanistan? I can count in my hand, in a single hand, people who stand out, like the former president, however corrupt he was, or Ghani, or Abdullah. But is there any room for this type of people in the new Taliban-led government? Will they accept this kind of moderates, so-called, and Western style political leaders? What do you think, Shaheen?
Thank you. The first, we have also question, like we Afghan American or Pashtuns have also questions. The question is to the Western: is the corruption, the corrupt leader who are they Afghans? They are elected by Afghans, or they are brought upon us? If you see the Bonn agreements, when Khalilzad went around and they talked to Iran, to Russia, to Pakistan, they brought their own, they had their own people, and they agree upon. They said, okay, you have this much portion in Afghan government, you have this much and this much and this much. And Afghan didn't know at the time too. Once they brought the corrupt warlords in the power, the main resources, the owner of the resources was the Western country. They were providing those, the money. They knew exactly who are corrupt, who are not. If I have the whole resources of something, if I'm in charge, I can turn the table differently. But they closed their eyes. They provided money to these warlords. There was some of, like, for example, one war, Ismail Khan, who was from the north, from the Herat province, and he was a minister of electricity. He bought with millions of dollars defective Iranian kind of machine that produce electricity, which they use gas. In Afghanistan is full of water. And why, the Western had closed their eyes, they didn't do about that. They got the millions of dollars that way. And then millions of dollars from the project from Turkmenistan, they brought the gas. Why they didn't help to build the dams like recently the Indian did, one of them. So the problem is that people who are in power, they were also not wanted by the Afghan people. They were imposed upon Afghan people. So there are two bad guys, one Talib, one so. No, they tell us which one do you like, which one you want among them. And the moderates were pushed. I can tell you, Professor, that there are a lot of Afghan people like you, professors, doctor, engineers. They were pushed. They have no food, even they have no food for the night in the table to eat. So these people, they were hidden plan by those countries, or also by all these countries who are involved, how to run this war, and they had their own interest. So blaming like Afghans, see in America, United States, there are a lot of people who are clean. In Europe, Afghan Americans, why they brought the corrupt one there to the power? Why they brought all those warlords who are involved, besides when American went to Afghanistan, these warlords were in caves. They were not powerful.
I can answer that. It's very simple. It's about money laundering. Corrupt people, let's say Asher and I were corrupt, and I want to money launder it back to us. I want a guy who rapes, steals, and murders like me. So I'm sitting in Washington or London and say, listen, I want you in power because you're as corrupt and dishonest as I am. I steal, you steal. I'm going to send you $20 million in foreign aid. That's not foreign aid. That's money for your bank account and my bank accounts. And You'll put it in your pocket, and we'll put in our pocket. Of course, we don't put it directly into our pockets so that when someone does our tax returns, we look squeaky clean. We have our kids do it, like Hunter Biden or other kids. And this has been going on since the beginning of time. In the old days, in the world of Chamulot and Al-Fahama, the big man, like in most countries of the world, they don't regard a bribe as a bribe. It's a commission. That's what you get to do business. You want to do business? Give me the money. And if I'm smart, like I say, someplace like Uzbekistan, and you have a number of Chamulotan tribes, I'll share it with the heads of the other Chamulots. Everybody gets a cut. No different than the Western countries. You think people are good? Yes, there are always a few. But with many of them, and they're very, and watch what I'm telling you in the next 2 years, there are people at the highest levels in Western countries where the body trail, the money trail, the drug trail, every trail you can think of is going to be exposed, and they're in big trouble. This has nothing to do with Democrat or Republican or Labor or Tory. A lot of people are going down. That's also very messianic. In order to inaugurate the 1,000-year messianic kingdom, the fifth Israelite kingdom of Daniel's vision, chapter 2, verse 44, a lot of human garbage has to be bulldozed. That doesn't mean lining up people and shooting them, that they would well deserve it. Primarily, it means exposing them. That's already happening. That's why you see in Western countries more and more people who slipped in the shower, fell out the window, resigned as CEOs, vanished, and went to hide in the jungles or in Argentina and New Zealand because they don't want to be exposed. Also, the people higher up the ladder say, listen, like let's say I was working for Asher. Asher says, you know, Lowell, I like you, you're a nice guy, but now dead men don't talk, so say your prayers because you're going to fall out the window, or you're going to get cancer or have a heart attack, or you're going to be hit crossing the street. Because I don't need you around to testify before the British Parliament, the French Parliament, the German Bundestag, and the United States Congress. That's the way the real world works. It's such innocency to ask the question because it presumes that many or even most people in the United States in the highest positions of power are good people, nice people. I give you an example from right here. About 20 years ago, the deputy head of the Shabak, Yossi Ginosar, was exposed for running a bank account with Yasser Arafat. When you do business with murderers and criminals, it corrupts everybody. He was doing business with one of our main killers. He was the deputy head of the Shabak, that's the Internal Security Services. Not long after he died of cancer, dead men don't talk. So you're dealing with the deputy, the corruption so high, you're talking about the deputy head of the very institutions that are supposed to protect us. Where was he exposed? Look up his name, Yossi Ginosar, G-I-N-O-S-S-A-R. And there are a couple of other Yossi Ginosar still alive from the Oslo death process period, hoping no one will notice what they did for money. But I'm sorry to tell them, you're not going to go down to the grave with your gray hairs in peace. It's all going to be exposed. So you want to know why they put in those warlords, the murderers, the thieves, the rapists? Because they're the same. And the foreign aid, most of it is phony, including right here. Very little of it gets to the people, and it's recycled back to the thieves and murderers. It's called money laundering. That's what foreign aid usually is. Yes, there are exceptions, but they are exceptions. That's why they put them in. It's very simple, actually. It has a terrible simplicity. And all you have to do with the Occam's razor, that's a philosophical concept, is follow the money. And I'm trained like a bloodhound to do that from when I was in the corporate reporting unit at Reuters in their second largest bureau in New York City. When I was in the corporate reporting unit, that's we did the follow the money. Once you understand the basic principle, it's not very complicated. There's a lot of people around today, remember what I'm telling you, in positions of seeming power, pinnacles of power, who will be found like Robert Maxwell floating off their yachts. They may be buried with a state funeral. One final point. Robert Maxwell was a great patriot when he was young for Israel. He went a little bit nuts as he got older. I don't want to go into some of his more sordid and bizarre behaviors. But at the very end, the reason Maxwell was knocked off by a Kidon, that's an assassination squad, which our Mossad uses, and I'm glad we have them, was that he said, listen, my businesses are collapsing. I need money. I want loans from Israeli banks. And if you don't give them to me, I'm going to say all sorts of things you don't want to have said. Well, shortly after there, Maxwell was found floating off his yacht. He was buried with a state funeral for what he did in 1948 when he got us the weapons from the Czechs. The Czechs did give us the weapons. So as it says in Casablanca, the movie with Humphrey Bogart, it's still the same old story. The fight for love and glory. The Pashtun resistance with its courage and bravery and great innocency was betrayed by the people, Charlie Wilson, the guy in the CIA who helped get the weapons. They were good guys, but then came in the bad guys. And eventually, all, as I think Asher would agree, when any Rome gets corrupt enough, Babylon, Assyria, Egypt, they all fall. And that includes Washington, D.C., if it gets corrupt enough and it's not a democratic republic. When the corruption, immorality level reaches a certain point, when Abraham says to God, but if there are 10 men, will you save the city? What if there aren't? That's it. And that's the point we're at for a lot of cities and societies around the world. There's your answer why they put them in. So they can steal. Okay, I said what I had to say.
Okay, can I ask a question? How come there's not like the Arab Spring, or why isn't there a popular uprising from the Pashtuns in Afghanistan or the local people? How come we don't, because in many places you will get the indigenous people that say enough is enough, we see the corruption, we don't want to go back to what we had before, and there's this uprising. Do you think there can be an uprising in Afghanistan by the indigenous local people?
I'll just give a short comment and then Shai Sadat will give you in details. Uprising has already begun in the Pakistani Pashtun areas, Pakistani captured or administered Pashtun areas with the name of Pashtun Protection Movement, and it is spreading all over Afghanistan. And even now you can see the Afghans are protesting and taking out rallies in support of the democratic government. The problem is with the West, because when they have interest, they support these springs or Arab Spring and the other springs. But when it comes to Pashtun, they are confused and they don't want, they don't project actually the PTM is a Pashtun spring, but it is not projected in the international media. And earlier, Lowell said that we will send IDF forces to Afghanistan and against these. I think we Pashtuns are capable of, doing the same thing, but we need weapons. We need support from the international community. Actually, the international community, especially the United States, UK, and EU, they have tied our hands in the back and have given us to these wolves to kill us. If we are given permission, the Pashtuns, I think Pakistan will not be there even for one day. But we have been tied to the international community is not giving us heavy weapons. International community is not giving us permission. International community is not supporting us. If they support it, within 2 days, there will be no Punjabis, So we are tied. The international community is not interested in Pashtuns. They are not interested in Pashtun Spring. So that is why we are in trouble. Otherwise, if they start supporting us, even now, the United States want a piece of cake for Taliban in the Afghan government. So that is the problem for Pashtuns. If we are given opportunity, we will not need anybody else. We will do it ourselves, and it will be very short. You will see it. Thank you very much. Shai Sadat.
I want to add something to what Fazal said. Yeah, That's what Charlie Wilson, look it up. I'm not a big fan of Tom Hanks, but he made a great movie called Charlie's War based on the book Charlie's War about Congressman Charles Wilson from Texas, who with a righteous man in the CIA, Asher of Greek origin, a Greek American. Watch the movie, it's worth it. You can also see Charlie's War.
I saw
It's
it.
all on the internet. They got the weapons to the Pashtun. And my favorite scene in the movie is when these Soviets are coming in their huge Hind helicopters to blow away a village, and they're joking about their girlfriends. And then all of a sudden, you see the guys come out with the missiles
tow gun,
on the shoulder, and
Yeah.
they shoot, and then they start blowing one up, and then the guy says on the radio, "Turn around! They have weapons." It reminds me of when the SS went in to the Warsaw Ghetto. And all of a sudden, we started to kill them. And they had two words, Judenwaffen, Jews' weapons, Judenwaffen, and they ran. Now, Les says, wow, and he means well. We held off the German army for 3 weeks. We didn't held off the German army for 3 weeks. They didn't expect the resistance and assigned very small forces. If the German army wanted to destroy the ghetto, it would have gone on 3 minutes. They just simply bombed it. They wanted to take the people for labor before they exterminated them, not to keep adding more police forces and let it go on for 3 weeks. That was not because, oh, Poland lasted 3 weeks and we lasted longer. That wasn't the whole force of the Wehrmacht. That was a pinky of a local police action. But let's leave that. It makes a nice story. Now, about arming the Pashtun, of course, you're right. The Pashtun need the weapons, just like the Jews needed the weapons in 48 that we got from the Czechs. But I have to be a party pooper again with Bubamaisis that we've all heard. There was no Arab Spring. That's pure crap. There was an attempt to overthrow Arab dictators and install Wahhabi regimes by the Anglo-American oil and banking establishment, and the little puppet step and fetch it, House Negro, Obama in the White House, who came out of nowhere, was a lawyer for, what was that organization called? They were closed down because of scandals, whatever it was, from Chicago, came out of nowhere and said, okay, you go in there, you're gonna do what we tell you. And if you don't do what we tell you, you'll fall down in the shower too. Don't look at any of these people as leaders. They're just puppets, most of them, and they'll do what they're told by the puppet masters up the food chain. Now, there are exceptionally, sometimes people are real leaders. Unfortunately, some of them don't do so well because they are independent and real, like Ronald Reagan, which is why right after he got in, the son of George Bush's best friend attempted to assassinate him. Why? They didn't want him in there because they couldn't control him.
Hello.
And they didn't like the fact that he and Casey, the head of the CIA, decided they would take out the Soviet Union. That's a whole nother story. Peter Schweitzer tells it in his book. The story's been well told. The bullet that hit Reagan at the age of 70 with 1 inch over would have hit him in the heart. And that would have been the end of Ronald Reagan, and in would have come George Bush, who's part of the Anglo-American oil and banking establishment, though what most people don't realize, if you go back 300 years to the really great families, the Bushes are Johnny-come-latelys in the world of America's biggest, oldest crime families, which go back to the 1700s, when they were dealing in rum and slaves. And in the 1900s, oil, gold, oil, gas, coal, and so forth. Then there's banking too. All right. So the Arab Spring, there was no Arab Spring. That's a nice word. There were no popular uprisings. They were funded by our Anglo-American oil and banking establishment who wanted to bring in Wahhabi dictators. And they almost did in Egypt. They got some guy from the Muslim Brotherhood, but he got thrown out. Who's the president of Egypt now? Sisi? He's not.
Sisi, yeah, Sisi.
He's okay. Sisi's okay. He went to a church. He's okay. But there was a Muslim Brotherhood is the Wahhabi Murder Hood. It's a sister organization of Al-Qaeda. And Hamas is the local never mind, there's no Palestinians branch of the these are Wahhabi outfits. So who have been the stormtroopers for the Anglo-American oil and banking establishment for 70 years? Going back to the 30s. No, after World War II is when they got busy. The Wahhabis, funded by Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the Gulf states. with recycled petrodollars. It's about money, lots of money. Okay, that's a whole nother story. Fazal knows it. It's in our book that I wrote that Fazal gave the introduction to. So again, in regard to Shachi's question, why did they support the warlords? Because they're warlords themselves. Murderers do business with murderers, and we'll all take a cut, like in The Godfather. We'll get the crime family heads together. Everybody will get a cut. We'll steal the money from people through taxation, and then we'll send it in foreign aid so we can recycle it back to ourselves with our accounts in the Cayman Islands. It's gone on since the beginning of time. Okay, that deals with why did they put in the warlords rather than the nice people. The other question is Arab Spring. It never happened. It never existed. It's a fantasy. It's a bubamyces. It's Alice in Wonderland. It sounds nice. There was no, not like the Prague Spring, which was real under Dubček. That was real. In the Arab world, as Fazal knows, there are dogs and pashas. That's it. There are masters and slaves. There are no humans that have no rights. You don't open your mouth against the leader. And if you do, you won't happen a chance to do it again. The Central Asian nations might be a little bit different. The ethnic Turkic Sunni Muslim majority, and soon the madman, the Ayatollah of Ankara, Erdogan the insane, will be gone too. That's a blip on the radar in terms of traditional Turkish Sunni. Yeah, they weren't very nice, the young Turks, the Armenians. They massacred them, that's true. But in general, the old Turks, the old Turkish Empire was a model of religious respect. You pay the millet system, pay your taxes and your bribes, and we give you ethnic and religious autonomy. That's a very advanced system. Go look for that anywhere in the world. So there's your answer. No Arab Spring. And yes, the Pashtun, of course you could do it yourselves. Who's going to arm you? Another thing, there is no international community. It's an international whorehouse, and nothing has changed in 6,000 years. It's about sex and money and power, where a few people control, persecute, torture, and terrorize the rest of everybody else, until a Moses comes along and say, let my people go. And a Pharaoh says, I won't. And then it becomes a battle of the gods with God, capital G. That's what's going on now, we believe, in the third and final war of Gog and Magog. So the international community is interested in money and resources, and they couldn't care how many people. In fact, many of them who believe in eugenics and euthanasia would be happy to have half the population of the world killed off. They call them useless mouths. They don't even call them people. You're just an human capital, with the emphasis on capital and human in parentheses in small print. That's the way the real world works. And that's why in the book of Zechariah it says, chapter 14, the very last verse, there'll no longer be a trafficker in the house of the Lord of hosts. A trafficker is a Kanani. It means businessman, but much more than business. I'll buy and sell anything, anybody, bodies, body parts. That's just if I'm interested in money. If I'm a sadist, it gets even worse. But get the money. That's the way the world runs. The Nimrodian world. That's what Abraham was in rebellion against. That's what the Jewish people, the children of Israel, represent. That's why we're a threat to all tyrants everywhere. That's why Pakistan and these Muslim countries promote Jew hatred. Because how else do you explain the fact that 50% of the men can't read and write? And people sleep in the city of the dead in Cairo. Look at the Arab and Muslim world. People aren't dead when they die. They're dead when they wake up. Hell is what they wake up to. A few people are rich. Most people are poor. The rich people live in Geneva. They couldn't care about their own, so they need to be able to say the Jews, the Jews, the Jews. They don't produce anything. No science, no technology, nothing. The Arab world never recovered from the Christian invasions of the Crusades from the West and the Mongol invasions from the East. Whatever Arab period, the golden age, that was gone 1,000 years ago. Since then, it's been in stagnation. They admire the Pashtunim because they regard you as the warriors, which you are. You beat everybody, the British, the Soviets, anybody. And the last thing they want is for the Pashtun to say, okay, thank you very much, we're Israelites, drop dead and get lost. That totally will freak them out. They know we're talking to each other. They are frightened of it. And you should be frightened of it, because it says in the prophet Zephaniah, the Pashtun are mentioned by name as the Bat Putsai, from beyond the river of Cush. That's the Hindu Kush. The remnant of my people will return, the Bat Putsai. And Rabbi David Kimchi says that is the name of the tribe at the time of their redemption. The Pashtun are named in the text in the book of Zephaniah. And to all the tyrants and potentates out there, the God who created us all, if he says it's time for my people to come home, you want to argue with him? You want to argue with him? Go ahead. There won't be many of you left. I don't believe in 10 years from now, we won't have to have this conversation, because there won't be a Pakistan. In the meantime, to say, you want press coverage, you won't get it. You want weapons, they won't give it you. I wish our regime would send the weapons, but our regime is itself a puppet regime for foreign interests. Again, follow the money. It ain't pretty. Follow them. It's not about Democrats or Republicans. It's not about left or right. It's about follow the money. And it just ain't pretty. I wish it wasn't true. For example, the submarine deals with Germany, a couple of officers, I don't know why bribes needed to be involved with ordering submarines from Germany, but there was some bribes for some officers, about $2 billion. $2 billion. And of course, like every other scandal in Israel, it's swept under the rug. And the purpose of every commission of inquiry here for 70 years is to protect the guilty and cover it up, not to expose it. How many weapons could be bought with $2 billion if there was no corruption and sent to the Pashtun forces? And like Fazal said, give us 2 days, they'd be gone. Then say, okay, fine. Now send 100,000 of your guys over here. I'll put you in Judea and Samaria on the borders of Gaza, and see what happens when the subhumanoid hominid orcs send over a balloon to blow up on you or launch one rocket. There won't be a second rocket. Or as I said, if a woman goes running and she gets raped, you know, after the 67 war, the Arabs had such terror of the Jews that anywhere, you could walk through any Arab village, an old person, a lady with a stroller, they'd run and hide in terror, especially in Hebron, because about 2 days ago, we remember in 1929, the slaughter of the Jews of Hebron. And what did the Arabs of Hebron think when the Jews came back? That we would do to them what they did to us. We didn't. And then their kids grew up here with the so-called intifadas, not knowing what it's like to live in an Arab dictatorship, and started throwing stones. You want to throw stones at King Hussein's army? You talk about Pakistan. In Black September, in September of 1970, when King Hussein, the Palestinians, never mind there are no Palestinians, but they decided, Arafat's group, Abdul Rauf al-Khudbi Husseini, the Egyptian from Alexandria, we're going to overthrow the king. He slaughtered 40,000. And who helped him? Zia Haq and a Pakistani delegation. It's not a country, it's a killing machine. Whether they send them to Afghanistan or they send them to East Bangladesh, or they sent them here. And where did Arafat's forces run for their lives? Over the river to Israel. Because they knew everything they say about us as lies, no one would machine gun them when they cross, they well deserve. Okay, so I hope you get your weapons, you get trained, and then the Pashtunim will train the Israeli army how to fight. And not say, well, we're going to make cheshbonot, and a situation deserves a limit of response. Tell that to Vladimir Putin. You shoot one rocket over the border to Russia and talk to him about limited response. Only the Jew is told to speak, and even internalize that as normal. I'm telling you, I'm behind enemy lines underwater in a Jewish madhouse. Why is it a madhouse? Because after 1900 years of church-sponsored mass murder, mass torture, and mass vilification, the ancient Israelites who took on the Roman Empire in the first and second revolts and almost brought it down, that's been beaten out of us. It hasn't been beaten out of you. And also, you know, we lost the 1.5 million kids in the Holocaust, so we need a lot of Pashtun boys and girls to come here to marry Israeli boys and girls and have 20 kids. All right, so to conclude, there was no Arab Spring. It's not real. And I know fantasies don't die. They're so nice. And Why do they support the worst elements in your community? Because they're the worst elements in our community. And whores and murderers do business with whores and murderers. Maybe tomorrow it will be different. We'll have righteous and wonderful leaders like Winston Churchill. Yeah, they exist, and he really was wonderful. But at the moment, we don't. Okay, that's all I had to say. Now I hand it back to you.
Thank you. Mr. Fazal and Lowell put it very well. There are two things involved. One is, like Fazal said, that, you know, PTM, you might don't know that a few days ago, they killed Usman Kakar. The ISI killed Usman Kakar only. The state of Pakistan killed Usman Kakar, one of the parliament member and well-respected Pashtun politician. Only he said, don't interfere in the affair of inside of Afghanistan. Don't support terrorism. So more than 1 million people came to the street. 1 million. But I didn't see any single report in the Western media. This is one thing. The other thing, like Mr. Lowell said, that the money. Iran is flooding Afghanistan with money. The Chinese is flooding Afghanistan with money. Arabs are flooding Afghanistan, not Afghanistan, basically Pakistan, and giving to those criminals, those warlords. The West has their own warlords. So, and the same time, they are empowering these fanatics and giving everything to them. So the thing is, in Afghanistan, a moderate person they don't let to live. There are, you know, when I sit with every Afghan in closed doors, they tell me how much they are tired of these fanatic, religious fanatic, these madrasas and this. But when they sit in the open, they cannot open their mouth. Why? Because these target killer who are funded by the state of Pakistan, who are funded by Iran, and they receive basically money. The Pakistan receive money from their own donors, and there's a big chain. There are big chain of criminals who are involved together. The other day, you know, there's one of the water dam in Herat. Because this water used to go to Iran daily. Taliban are racketing that dam to destroy it and to flood the whole Pashtun land, and because the only thing is because Iran want that water. The same thing is with Pakistan. We have the biggest river in Kunar River. They go to all the Indus River and down to Punjab. But we have no, you know, they wouldn't let Afghans to build that water dam. They don't allow anyone. There was a professor, there was a man, you know, you might heard Nakamura, a Japanese, who took a little water, a little stream to build a small farmland, a small amount of water. He was killed. He was killed with hundreds of bullets in his body. This was a professor. So my point is that on one side, they are controlling our, like the madrasas, the mosque, you know, they're shooting, you know, they kill us from different angle in different ways. It's not just they shoot us. They take us, our culture. They control the mosque. From the mosque, they give their fatwa. They call us infidel. Then the other come, they shoot us in the street. So then the mullah, the mullah doesn't come. They say you're infidel. You're dead. You're die. Your body shouldn't be, you know, perform that religious things. They don't come there. So the Pashtuns, they kill the Pashtun in all these different ways since you know, for a long time. That since I was young, when I went to Pakistan as a refugee, I mean not Pakistan, to the occupied land, the Punjab occupied that land, Pashtunistan. So we're there. They are in charge. The state of Pakistan is in charge. The state of resources. Think about that. They killed $33 million. Go search it to Haqqaniya Madrasa. Fazal Nawal Haqqaniya Madrasa terrorists. You can type it. It will tell you this is a terrorist training center, accepted by international community, accepted by the United States, accepted by European, by all of those countries. but the state of Pakistan take the fund from the Pashtuns community. This fund's supposed to go to the universities, to the colleges, but they take the money from Pashtun's fund, Pashtun tax money, and gave it to those terrorists because the state of Pakistan, Punjab is in charge, and Pakistan, Punjab run everything. My point is that nothing is in our hand. We don't have any, there's no country that would come and do an honest deal with us, sit with us, and we will show our
we're losing the connection with Shahi. It's on and off. Why don't we? Good.
Yeah. So yeah, we will show who we are. We will see the real Pashtuns. We don't have, we are, like in Afghanistan before this holy this is dirty war they call holy war. Before that, there were Jews, there were Christian, my father would go, like I said last time, we would call Hindu Lala, means older brother. If you see in Afghanistan, all these Jewish or Hindu or Christian community were more comfortable among Pashtuns, because if you see where they live, just search it. Go your search and see where they live. They lived among Pashtuns. So the thing is, we Pashtuns are not how they show to the world. Think about that, how much they criminalize us. Our dress, Pashtun dress, like Waziristani young men, long hair, like that. What they did, they created Taliban and let them have grow like here, like the same like Waziristani, and wear Pashtun dress. And then they can be Punjabi, they can be brainwashed Pashtun, anyone, but they wear them the same dress. And when they criminalize our dress, this clothes, anybody who see us in that clothes, they think, oh, these are danger people. It's exactly what happened, like Hitler was doing to Jews in 40, 45, 42, 43s in that time. They're doing exactly to us. But the world is silent. The world is watching. And I hope that there would be more people and to see, to watch what's going on, and then come to stand with us in shoulder and defend this evils who are just destroying humanity, destroying our old ancient culture, the culture of Pashtun Wali, the culture of the Afghan that we lived for centuries there in that land, and they're taking away everything from us. The Russian, now the Chinese, the Iranian, the Punjabi from Punjab, and the Saudi funding them, and the other funding Pakistan, and everyone, the Pakistan get money, and they use our land like a battleground for the big games. Thank you so much.
And Faisal, can I just ask, what is the percentage of Pashtuni in Afghanistan? How much of the population of Afghanistan is made up of Pashtun? Roughly.
If you allow me, I can answer that. Fazal has the answer. I can. Okay, I will answer that because here's the thing. When the war started, the first thing when the European and the American did is to marginalize us. If you see the surveys before this jihad, in some surveys Pashtun are 72%, in some surveys 65%, but they are not less than 65%. But when the United States wanted to go, and then they said, okay, because Taliban was Pashtun and the Pashtuns are, they put it that way. So they brought the level to 45%, 40 to 45, even 35%. But when you see the BBC report, they said 45%. But if you see actual survey that done during Dawood regime, and before that, they're 60 to 60, some 65 to some to 70%. So now the Iranian or the Pakistani, Punjab or the other country, they want just to punish Pashtun further, to marginalize them. One of the biggest issue in Afghanistan, the problem is this also. See, I give you an example. For example, in Ghazni, there are, I guess, 19 districts. Among 19 districts, there are three our Hazara Afghans. The one district is mixed. Three or four are one is mixed, and three is Hazara. Another is also mixed, and the rest 13, 14 are all Pashtuns. But they have no representative in Kabul parliament. No representation. So these things also brought a big problem, because when American went with the Northern Alliance, and the Northern Alliance was at the time backed by Iran and also by Russia in that time. So they gave us things. But right now, these things are slowly getting away. Afghans are getting united. The Pashtuns, Tajik, all the Pashtun, Tajik, Baloch, everyone. And what I said, I said, this is from the survey, and I can find this book for you too. That there's a book written. I can find it and I can search it, and but that all surveys are there. This is what I heard from the survey. Thank you so much.
So I just want to mention, so democratically, and the whole world, the whole Western world is democratic. The ideal is the democratic. So democratically, the Pashtuns are the majority in Afghanistan. So they should be the rulers. That's the whole thing.
You're right. You're right. But the Iran doesn't want Pashtun, because Iran has a historically problem with Pashtuns. Iran never want Pashtun, and the Pakistan is because of the Pashtunistan issue. A strong Pashtun in Afghanistan means the creation of Balochistan, Pashtunistan. Creation of Balochistan means half Iran, half Pakistan. So these are the issues, and this is why they don't want. At the same time, Russian has, because Russian destroyed Pashtun's rule. The Russian knows that, because when the Russian came, the Pashtun the Pashtun roots and everything has been destroyed. Once the real history come forward, the children of Pashtuns, future children of Pashtun, will never forget what the Russian did to Pashtuns. So basically the Russian destroyed, like Lowell said, first the Russian came, they destroyed it, the foundation. After the foundation is destroyed, these people scatter to Iran, to Pakistan, and fall in the mouth of wolves. So they become the victim of everyone. So they use them for war, they use them for proxies, and then exactly know that the Pakistanis will never want Pashtun. If they want, they will bring people like Taliban. Taliban means, because they're brainwashed, the Taliban says there's no boundaries. Islam has no boundary. Islam, everywhere we have to go to do jihad. This is their basically mentality. Because then in that way, then they don't believe that Pashtuns are that are other. So they can go across anywhere. And then second, this way they will show to the world, Pakistan or Iran will show how, look, the Pashtun are the most uncivilized people. Should they rules with these uncivilized? So this is why they brought forward this kind of faces. Now, if you see the Western media, again, they are trying to because they have a secret deal. I feel they have a secret deal with Pakistan. Now they again give the face of Pashtun to Taliban, which is totally wrong. This is injustice. Because they don't show the face of PTM, where millions people came to the street without weapon and without anything, and they want education for their children. They want freedom. They want justice. but they don't show them. But they show, but in contrast, they show the Taliban in the Western media. They say, "Hi, dear Pashtuns." And tomorrow again, they will blame on me. They will blame us. They will blame my children. That this is Pashtun culture. But I promise, if you want to really know, go to Afghanistan before 90s. Go further and further, and go to read, and you will know the true Pashtun who we were, and who are now. We are. This is why I said they killed us in different ways. They, like when I said they took identity from us, they took those great values. They fed me with hatred. They fed me that I hate the Jews. They fed me to hate Christian. They fed me to hate European, American, Hindus. And this is not me. This is not me. This is there what they fed it me. But it's a shame when they fed me, but this is a bigger shame that the Western country let Pakistan and Iran to brainwash me to that level, that innocent children who lost their parents in Russian war, they took them in the madrasas and feed them with the Arab extremist ideology, the Iranian extremist ideology, and then they are using us like a machine, and then they call their Pashtuns. This is what is happening to us. This is exactly what's happening to us. Thank you so much.
Just to let you know, Lowell, it was ACORN, the Chicago organization of Solar Lisky.
Fazal, we're coming to the end of our 2-hour period. Could you make some Thank you, Asher. Oh, since Asher made that point, ACORN had to be shut down because they were, again, money corrupts people. This can happen to any of us. They were involved in prostitution and stuff. They were supposed to be a community organization to protect the poor, but they ended up becoming a crime family. They got caught and they had to be shut down, which isn't to say that Obama was responsible for that. He was already gone at that point, or wasn't. Anyway, he was their lawyer at a certain point. And while he was president, this was exposed. But again, the corporate fascist mouthpieces gave it as little coverage as possible, like on page 900 of the New York Times or whatever. And they did that in the Holocaust too. Max Frankel, who was an editor at the New York Times after he left, wrote a book expressing his outrage, whatever their reasons were. The Salzburgs had problems with their Jewish identity, or they were anti-Zionist, or they did
not believe the numbers. They just could not believe.
That's also a possibility. I know from my own grandfather.
Yeah.
My mother's father and mother got out in 1920 from Lemberg. That was where my grandmother came from. And he had been in the Austro-Hungarian army. And in 1939, a Jew who was in Nazi-occupied Poland got out and ended up in their living room. My grandfather, Benjamin, he said, I didn't believe what he was saying.
Yeah.
I didn't believe what he was saying. We couldn't imagine the Germans would be so cruel. He said, look, I was just 20 years ago in the Austro-Hungarian army. The German army had a kashrut department. There's a cemetery of 20,000 Jews who were in the German army in World War I near Verdun. They were very respectful of Jewish traditions and customs. I have a prayer book, an Austrian prayer book from the Austro-Hungarian Empire with a prayer for Franz Josef that we got from an old Jew who escaped from Vienna and went to Shanghai and came here. And the prayers for Emperor Franz Josef that was used by soldiers in the army. But anyway, that's one possibility. They couldn't believe it. Another possibility is, for some reason, Roosevelt asked them, they were asked to suppress the story. They thought it would cause anti-Semitism because the Nazis would say, you see, you're fighting a Jewish war, and the Nazis did use that problem.
It's interesting that the Germans were accused of propaganda, of course, for the number of Jews, but then they turned it around when they could not hide it anymore and say, we're doing the world's business. We're doing you a favor, you know.
Right. they said all these things. But why did I mention that?
Yeah.
About Acorn. So it got very little coverage. Asher and I have different opinions about President Trump, but I'm sure we'd agree about this. If President Trump had done that, it would be front page news in all the Washington Post, Shachrit, Minchen, Mariv, every issue, read about this. Let's put that on the side. So Shadi asked, why doesn't the Western media cover this? Again, it's not a media. These are corporate fascist mouthpieces, and the bosses say, for whatever reason, who doing business, which companies, again, follow the money. Remember, people at the top of the food chain, the great families and the corporations they control in general, have no loyalty to any country, clan, tribe, or family. They regard themselves as an international ruling class. They rule through the corporations they control and the tax-exempt foundations they control. The laws are carefully set up that the corporation is a person which isn't a person and shields you from liability as an individual. Now, under Noahide law, which we believe will soon be the law of the land in every country, oh no, if your corporation commits a crime and you're a major stockholder, you are responsible. But at the moment, no, I'm not responsible. And we get our Congress to pass laws that the drug companies, they've been doing this for years. Forget about now. You get injured, we're exempt from liability. Not under Noahide law. So no, they're not going to cover it. The question is there anyone out there who'll send you the weapons? You may find it comes from an unexpected source. It came to us from the Czechs in '48. Maybe it will come to you from Uzbekistan. Maybe it will come to you as it will. If God wants it to come to you, like it did with Charlie Wilson and that Greek American Asher CIA officer. He's played by Seymour J. Hoffman in the movie, who unfortunately died. Whether he committed suicide or not, that's another question. Anyway, he's dead. Let's hope that starting yesterday, someone
Who are the suppliers right now of the Taliban? Primarily Pakistani arms or Russian Kalashnikovs?
Well, it would be Pakistan would be supplying the Taliban, but then the question is who's behind Pakistan to supply the Taliban? And then you start to take apart the Matryoshka doll, and it goes to all sorts of places where people who want to appear nice and respectable don't want you to know that they're at the end of the food chain. Let's hope there are some Czechs out there who will start sending weapons to the legitimate Pashtun people, the tribes, clans, and families, not the Deobandi Wahhabis of the Taliban brainwashed movements of these poor Pashtun boys. Of course, is it possible to convert them back? We'll give it an old college try, because deep in every soul, the menorah, the flame isn't extinguished. And that's more powerful than all the teachings of Wahhab and the Wahhabis. It goes back thousands of years to Mount Sinai. In that conflict, I have no doubt who wins it. Question is how to, and incidentally, as Dr. Shalva-Weil has shown, people in the Taliban were interviewed. Do you know you're of Israelite origin? Yes. Now let's go kill all the Zionists. Yes, yeah, we're Israelites, but we don't like those Zionists. We don't like those European Jews. Anyway, they're not Jews, they're all Khazars or something. They're not us. When Shalva, when she went to Kashmir to meet with real Pashtun leaders, and the small ones are 6 feet tall. The regular ones are 7 feet tall. Because after all those 1,000 years in the mountains, if you were sickly, it's not like the Greeks, they put sick kids to die in the mountains. You just didn't live that long. It's only the healthy ones survived. The Taliban walk up and down the mountains. Everyone's mountain troops. So she meets it's arranged, she's meeting in Kashmir on the border, a Pashtun tribal leader, and this immense being comes in flowing robes, and she says, Mr. whatever his name is, Your Excellency, I'm from Israel. And he looked at him and said, what? I am Bani Yisrael. Who are you? Who are you, little girl? You're from Israel? No, I'm Israel. So I wish Les would come back to conclude the program properly, but Les, you came back just in time.
You know what, my phone, I've got a problem. I haven't got much battery left, but I just want to thank you so much.
You have enough battery to give a concluding remark?
Yes, I do. I think I do. Okay, I do.
Do you have
so-
battery? Do you have enough battery for Fazal to give a concluding remark, and then you to give a concluding remark, or you're going to conk out before then?
So, let me just give mine, and then Fazal, I want you to finish off.
Okay.
So, Shahi and Fazal, I want to thank you so much. And Saki, you said something which really touched a terrible nerve here. You said there were over 1.5 million protesters. And, I've been watching, I watch CNN, I watch Sky, I watch France 24. Nothing. No mention whatsoever. And you know what? And I'll tell you something quite amazing. Do you know that there was also protests in Ramallah and in Bethlehem about a human rights activist that was killed because he spoke out against Abbas, and there were protests. Not a word in the world media on that either. So the world has, they've got selective. They're very selective in what they want the public to see, and if it doesn't fit their narrative, then they won't show it. And we see that through history. But you know what? The truth is the truth, and just know that we understand your plight, and we understand what the Pashtuns are going through, and there's a deep connection between us and you, and we're so glad, Lol, that you have organized this program for God to many people. And Asher, we so appreciate your input that you always give from Asher, and to Saki and Faisal. Really, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's been
Thank you.
tough to listen to this, but it's really important. And our listeners are going to gain tremendously from your insights. So Faisal, if you could give our concluding remarks, but really thank you. And we look forward to our next month's session as well.
Thank you very much, Les Glassman, and thank you all for your valuable inputs on the situation. One thing is very important, that Pashtuns are very resilient people. Some time back, I was also very disappointed with our Pashtuns because I thought things cannot change. But recently, with the rise of PTM, I was encouraged, and then I was connected with really, really great Pashtun people like Shai Sadat Sahab and so many others. So there is another hope, I think, for us. And for us, it's very important who are in diaspora, the Pashtuns in diaspora, to work in advocacy. And for that advocacy, we need the help of all our friends in Israel and United States of America to connect us with the lawmakers in the United States, so that we can present our point of view to these lawmakers, and even in the administration, some people. We here in the Europe and United States of America, we have the passports. Some have the United States passport, some have like French passport, and so we can move everywhere, and we can do this advocacy very effectively. So that needs to be coordinated so that in future we can change the situation. Thank you very much.
Inshallah. Inshallah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, since Les is gone, I suppose I'm supposed to give the conclusion. Thank you, Fazal, for hosting our episode 3 of our monthly Pashtun Israel Fellowship seminar, and for sharing the Pashtun Israel Fellowship of our little, but we hope lethal, Root and Branch Association. Gideon had 300 warriors. We're little, we want to be lethal. And we thank esteemed guest Shahi Sadat from Los Angeles.
From San Francisco.
San Francisco. Either way, we wish they all could be California girls. That was always nice.
I left my heart in San Francisco.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward that you come. I'm looking forward that you come to San Francisco one day and then visit
Amen.
us. So we want to thank
Meanwhile,
you.
join me on Monday for the Greek program to learn something about the Greeks.
Professor Mattathias for joining us and for hosting our monthly Greek Jewry through the ages seminar, and he knows what suffering is. He was born in a cave in Nazi-occupied Greece because he was such a beautiful baby. He reminded me
Ask them to tune in on Monday.
What?
Ask them to tune in on Monday for
Yes,
more.
I will send them all about. I'll send them about it. And
We
of
will.
course, thank Les for
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Les.
our guest.
Thank you, Shahi. Thank you, Fazal.
Right. So, thank you to everybody. And again, we are broadcasting from the land of Israel, city of God, Jerusalem, Hill of the Priests, overlooking Mount Moriah, where we believe that the third and final Israelite temple of Jerusalem will soon be under reconstruction and stand forever. As for the prophet Ezekiel, please see the biblical book of Ezekiel, chapters 40 through 48. It is Tuesday, July 27, 2021. In the Gregorian calendar, now that's the night, it's the 19th of Av, 5781. Shalom, good night to everyone from Jerusalem.